Sir, I was saying that it is quite.
Yeah, welcome back to part 2 of today's session. Yes, Aarti ma'am, please.
Sir, I was saying that it is very, very clear. And if I can say in few sentences, then aims are the vision statements. These aims are leading us to the curricular goals. From
Hmm.
curricular goals to competencies, and competencies lead us to the, learning
Learning
outcomes.
outcomes. So
That's
few
it.
few learning outcomes together we achieve one competency in one particular stage, and such
Yeah,
several competencies together we are reaching out to one curricular goal, and all those curricular goals once achieved we are achieving the aims of the school
right.
education. So this is how it
Yes.
is. Moving further. Yeah. Let us see 3.1.3, which is nested learning standards. In the curricular areas of art education and physical education and well-being, this NCF has defined nested learning standards. These curricular areas have been given due attention in terms of specifying clear learning standards that outline the expected learning achievements of students. So in these three areas like art education, physical education and well-being, okay, they have come up with specific learning outcomes, okay, which are to be achieved by the child. To achieve these learning standards, particularly at the middle and secondary stages, schools would need specialist teachers and resources such as playground and equipment. Okay, so to achieve, they are giving the master statement here itself. So in middle and secondary stages, if you need to achieve the learning outcomes as mentioned in NCF, we need properly specialist teachers and grounds and equipments that are related to those subjects. Giving due consideration to the time, schools might require to make such teachers and resource available. The learning standards for these two curricular areas have been defined as two sets. So there are two sets of learning standards that are to be achieved, and there is a time for teachers, schools to get ready with these teachers and necessary equipments. The first set, called Learning Standards 1, details the full range of curricular goals and competencies to achieve the educational aim of curricular area. So, two sets we are talking about. One is Learning Standard 1. Okay, in Learning Standard 1, what is that it is telling us? Complete range of curricular goal which we need to achieve. These should be accomplished by all schools as soon as they add the required resources. Okay, so all schools should strive hard to achieve learning standards 1. Nested within these is subset called learning standards 2. These should be accomplished by all schools from the very initiation of the implementation of NCF. Okay, the nested learning standards are to be achieved immediately. We should start achieving them now itself. Section 3.2, approach to curriculum content. Okay. Mm, let us see what type of curriculum content are we supposed to have in all the stages. Content of the curriculum will be contained in and manifest directly in the various resources and materials used in the teaching learning process. Okay, so curriculum content is not just a textbook. There are many things. Okay, so out of many things, there are few given here. The first thing is books. For example, textbooks, workbooks, playbooks, and any other kind of books and their extracts are also considered as curriculum content. Apart from that, other kind of TLMs, toys, puzzles, technology-based material, including videos and experimental kits are also considered as curriculum content. Third one is learning environment is also considered as curriculum content. For example, classroom space, activities in the local environment, engagement with the community. The learning environment of student must be safe, inclusive, and stimulating. Safe means completely safe. Inclusive means chances of participation should be there for every type of child, even for disabled child. Stimulating, which means constantly motivating the child. Developing books, including the textbooks, must follow a rigorous process based on an appropriate syllabus. Okay. we have to have a proper appropriate syllabus, and based upon the syllabus, the books are to be developed. Carefully selected TLMs play an essential role in all classrooms. TLMs in all the classrooms are to be carefully selected and used. The arrangement and organization of the learning environment is also important across all stages, and especially in the foundational and preparatory stage. Okay, the learning environment has to be properly, safely, like made ready, especially in foundational and preparatory stages. Content selection. How are we supposed to select the content? Let's go there. This section describes the broad approach for selecting appropriate curricular content. More specific considerations for choosing content within particular curricular areas are elaborate upon in their respective chapters. So based upon the aims, curricular goals and all, we are supposed to develop the content, isn't it? So it will be again chapter wise, context wise. Okay. Curricular goals, competencies, and learning outcomes give clear direction as to what content is to be used for creating learning experience for students. So based upon the learning outcomes and the competencies that are to be achieved, we can choose the books. While we are selecting books, it's always better that we make a checklist of all these things and we select the books. Concepts formed in the foundational and preparatory stages are largely perceptive. Okay, like visually discriminated, color as well, such sort of things. And practical as well as, but not theoretical. In foundational and preparatory stages, the concept should not be theoretical. Exploring the theories behind the perceptive and practical concept is expected in the middle and secondary stages of schooling. This we have seen day before yesterday and yesterday as well. So till grade 5, it should be only perceptual based and concept based, what do we say, practical based textbooks, whereas theoretical based textbooks are to be given right from grade 6. Choices of content for each stage must be based upon these considerations. So while we are selecting the textbook, we should make sure that till grade 5, theoretical concepts are not given. Content in the foundational and preparatory stage should be derived from the children's life experience. Mostly the immediate social life and natural life of the child has to be, given more significance in selecting the content for this stage. It should also reflect the cultural, geographical, and social context in which the child is developing and growing. We just now we discussed, isn't it? Immediate, world of the child has to be considered. As students move through the middle and secondary stages, content can move away from the familiar and include ideas and theories not necessarily represented in the immediate environment. Okay, so when we are moving from preparatory stage, we are moving into middle stage and secondary stage, it can become theoretical. It need not be about the immediate environment. The very good 8 years we have used for immediate environment. Right from nursery to grade 5, we have been exploring immediate environment. Content should be tied to capacities and values that students need to develop through the stages of schooling. Okay, so what capacity and value the child has to develop in each stage. Based upon that, we have to select the content. Special care should be taken to avoid the promotion of stereotypes. There are many stereotypes in the society. Okay, so we should make sure that stereotypes are not given in the content. These are general principles of content selection. Subsequent chapters on curricular areas describe the specifics. Okay, so these are the basic things. As we explore the rest of the chapters, we'll get to know more about it. Now, textbooks first. Let us discuss role of textbooks. Textbooks have been given great importance in Indian school education. In fact, it is a widely shared notion that in practice, in too many of our schools and in the culture of our education system, textbooks stand in for all of the curriculum and syllabus, and the use and importance of most other materials and resources fades in comparison to textbooks. Like we consider textbook is a very important factor in Indian school education, isn't it? Other things we don't consider much. That's the reason if there is no textbook, the child is always asked to stay outside the class because they feel the textbook is the most important resource than anything else. This is unhealthy. and unhelpful for developing a robust system of school education. So it's an unhealthy practice. It is not just the textbook which plays a significant role in teaching the child. Everything, like we have seen that school process, school culture also plays a significant role in curriculum. This NCF has emphasized the achievement of learning standards as the central purpose of schooling. This emphasis signals a desirable shift in the role of textbooks. Okay, there is a shift in the role of textbooks. The current practice of covering the textbooks as the focus of classroom interaction should be avoided. Okay, it is not that we have to cover the content that has been given in textbook, that has to be avoided. Okay, instead, the focus of classroom interaction should be the achievement of specific learning outcomes, and textbooks are one of the many resources available for teachers and students for achieving the learning outcomes. So the learning outcomes which are given in NCF, those are to be achieved. For that, textbook is only a source. It is not that with instead of 10 lessons, with 5 lessons, if you are able to achieve the learning outcomes, then that is fine. Some important considerations regarding textbooks include reduction in textbook centricity. As mentioned, our education is over dependent on textbooks. This must change. Other kinds of TLMs, other kinds of books, and the surrounding environment must be fully utilized. Rather than textbook, TLMs and environment, surrounding environment has to be used. Expansive and inclusive notion of textbook. The sharp distinction between textbooks, workbooks, playbooks, and other kinds of books is suboptimal from a student's perspective. The content and the form must be designed from a lens of what will get the student to learn better. It is not that we should have many books. Which book is useful for the child to learn better? And not from a textbook definition of textbooks. Okay, it is not that textbooks are only the things which are going to help the child. Availability of multiple textbooks. Even the best of textbooks have their limitations. So from a perspective of improving learning, it will be more effective to have multiple textbooks made available for the same subject and class, which can be compared and selected by school system. And some may even choose to use more than one textbook. We have this option also. We can not only one textbook, we can have more than one textbook. And school should have the option of having many textbooks and selecting one from all of that. Quality of textbooks must be high. Students deserve textbooks with high design and production value with respect to both content and form. The design, layout, and illustrations all matter for ensuring quality, as does the final printing and production. So all these things are to be kept in mind because children deserve the best books. Cost of textbooks. The public system does and should make available textbooks free to all students. Public system means government. However, the cost of textbooks matters and so must be optimized. Considering all these things and availability to everyone, the rates are to be fixed. Since textbooks have the connotation of being mandatory, this should not be used for profit, uh, profiteering by some publishers. Okay, because in India, textbooks are considered very important. Publishers shouldn't think that we have to cost very much. Okay, on each book. Key principles of textbook design. Just a second, teachers. So let us see what are the basic principles that we need to keep in mind while we are, choosing the textbooks or designing the textbooks. Curriculum principle. The textbook should be designed specifically to achieve the competencies for the stage and learning outcomes for the grade. Okay. So the learning outcomes which are given by NCF in that particular class are to be achieved. So the competencies are also to be achieved by the end of the stage. Textbook developers and designers should not only be aware of the competencies of the particular domain, or curricular area for which the textbook is being developed, but also the competencies for the whole stage. So it is better that you can even go stage-wise textbooks also, like we have done that. For foundation stage, we have chosen one particular series, and for preparatory level, we have chosen one particular series. This would allow them to bring in horizontal connections across the domains and curricular areas of the stage. Okay, value principles. The content chosen in the textbook should also reflect the desirable values and dispositions articulated by the NCF. Okay, the content which is there. Okay, it should keep in mind the values and dispositions which are given in chapter 1. While values are often not explicitly taught, the school culture and environment should embody the desirable values. Apart from textbooks, the culture, school culture and school environment should think about these values and incorporate processes. In addition, the content in textbooks play an important role in reflecting these values. The content which is given in textbook should reflect the values of chapter 1. For example, compassion in general and compassion for animals in particular can be reflected in using phrases such as, we take milk from cows rather than cows give us milk. So it is compassion, isn't? We are taking. Cows are not calling us and they are giving. Cow is giving. Basically, it is an animal. It is producing milk to give it to its child, its offspring. But we are collecting its milk and we are using. Okay. Or Amundsen was the first to reach the South Pole rather than Amundsen conquered the South Pole. Who is someone to conquer? Isn't it? So he has reached over there. In this way, compassion has to be developed. Okay, in our statement also, we should use what we speak, what we think, what we do are to be aligned properly. Discipline principle. Textbook developers should have some knowledge of the discipline associated with the textbook being developed. Discipline means that particular curricular area. The content and sequence included in the textbook should be carefully selected so as to not contradict some of the core principles of these disciplines. Okay, every subject has got its own discipline, its own subject matter, a specific subject matter. While we are developing the content, it shouldn't override that particular discipline. Pedagogy principle. Textbook developers need to have a clear understanding of the pedagogy, which means the method which teacher can use that is appropriate for the competency and content. There are certain competencies. To achieve certain competencies, certain methods of teaching are to be followed. So while developing a textbook, we should keep that also in mind. In language, the balanced approach of including oral language, phonics, and word solving instructions and meaning making needs to be incorporated all together for foundational stage. So keeping in mind competency and how that competency can be achieved, we have to design a textbook. They should also strive to keep textual matter to a careful minimum, avoiding the earlier common practices of overloading textbook with details of questionable significance. Okay, it is not that textbooks again get overloaded. We have to think about learning outcomes and more significance has to be given to the immediate environment of the child and classroom and experience, complete experience. Language principle. The language used in the context of the textbook should be fully cognizant of the language competencies expected for that particular grade in the learning standards. Particularly in the early grades like foundation and preparatory stage, students are still learning to read and textbook developers of all subjects must take this into consideration. So language development is something which we have to consider a lot. Unfamiliar vocabulary and sentence structure should be appropriately scaffolded in the textbooks through glossaries and explanations. So proper explanation and glossary has to be given for unfamiliar words. Okay. In higher grades like middle stage onwards, developing academic linguistic proficiency should not be seen as the responsibility of only language textbooks. Okay, it is not only always the language teacher or language textbooks, it's the responsibility of everyone. Subject textbooks should highlight language use specific to that particular subject, which means every language has got its own terminology, isn't it? So based upon that, the glossary has to be given so that children will understand how to use a particular word. Technology principle. Textbook developers should be aware of the current technology and audiovisual material available for enhancing the learning experience of students. Activities that involve digital technology and reference to external material should be embedded appropriately in the textbook. So proper technology can also be used in the textbook. Wherever it is needed, we can give QR codes. Okay, audio-visual material has to be given so that children learn with audio and visual. There are children who learn with audio and visual things as well, isn't it? Inputs. Context principle. The local context and environment are important considerations for the choice of content in textbook for foundational and preparatory stages. This was emphasized earlier as well. Okay, local context has to be taken. Immediate environment of the child in the foundational and preparatory stages. Moving from the familiar to the unfamiliar is an important aspect of learning. Okay, so the child will explore the immediate environment. From there, he will explore the environment which is not around him. The textbook should also contain a balance of familiar context that is a comfort for students and unfamiliar context that should generate curiosity and challenge their thoughts and preferences. So familiar content is to make the child comfortable. Unfamiliar content is to challenge the thinking of the child and generate curiosity in the child. For the middle and secondary stage, this may not be a strong consideration in all curricular areas because every curricular area has got its own discipline. So as per the discipline, we have to move on in secondary and middle stages. Presentation principle. The textbook should be also so well designed that they grab the attention of the students. For the foundational and preparatory stages, the balance between visual material and text should be titled towards visual material. Okay, like visual material should be more when compared to secondary and middle stages in foundation and preparatory stages. The color schemes and design themes should be attractive and consistent. Attractive at the same time, consistent. The font and size of text material should be visible and least confusing for young children to decode. It shouldn't be confusing to decode the words. For the middle and secondary stage, attention should be given to the flow of concepts, clarity in articulation, and the design of illustrations, not only to clearly illustrate the concept, but also to initiate discussion and invite students to ask questions. So it is changing from foundation to preparatory stage. When coming to middle and secondary stage, the complete system is changing. Here it is completely making the child comfortable. Right from middle stage, it is making the child to think over what is given. The final thing is diversity and inclusion. It is important to maintain the principles of diversity and inclusion in the choice of content for books, textbooks. There should be a lot of inclusive material, inclusive content should be there, diversity content should be there. Even within states, there are regional variations, and these need to find adequate representation in textbooks. Like if we take Telangana only, or if we take India, there are diverse features. From state to state, there is diversity. Within the state also, there is some diversity. All such sort of things are to be shown in the textbook so that children will get to know, okay, and they will explore it. So hope I was clear with these principles of textbooks. Key principles of textbook designing. Any doubts? Chitra ma'am, was I clear? Is there any repetition needed or is there anything that I left
No,
or
no.
didn't cover?
No, sir, it was clear. Only thing is that who means a lot of thought has to go. I think a lot of textbooks will have to undergo a change to meet the requirement
Yes, yes.
of
So these
NCERT.
are the parameters also to select the textbooks.
Exactly.
So as school heads, while we are selecting the textbooks, these parameters we have to keep in mind, prepare a checklist, and then we have to select
Yes.
the books. It takes a very good time. Okay, so tomorrow we will discuss about important elements in textbooks. So that's all for today. Any doubts,
Thank you.
participants, please let me know so that I can address.
No, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So that's all for today. We shall meet tomorrow again, exactly at 3 o'clock. Thank you one and all for joining.
Thank you,
Good evening.
sir.
Good evening, ma'am.